There tend to be narratives out there about Illumina.
With leadership comes also that everybody has an opinion about you.
What is it that really sets the company apart?
It's not sequencing, it's the end-to-end workflow.
I looked down at my phone, I had a text saying your CEO's in China. Welcome to The Sequence. This is Illumina's video podcast series featuring candid conversations with the people that are leading the genomics revolution. My name is Adrian Benjamin. I am super excited, if not incredibly stoked, to use a San Diego word, to be the host for episode 2 here at Illumina headquarters. I'd love to welcome our CEO, Jacob Thaysen, to the conversation. So excited to have you here. Super excited to get into this.
Absolutely, Adrian. I'm excited too, and thanks for inviting me.
We're going to have a great conversation here. I know we're going to nerd out probably a little bit, which is something that I love to do. Whether it's your recent visit to China, the momentum that we're seeing in clinical, AI and genomics, the roadmap that we have with the NovaSeq X, there is lots of fun stuff to talk about. But I have to admit, I don't know you all too well. And so I was hoping that we could start off this conversation, maybe for me, for the audience, to kind of get you to know you a little bit. There's a couple of things that I do know. You are a physicist. That has to bring a really interesting perspective to the field of genomics. You're Danish. I've never been there.
No.
I'd love to go.
I'm originally from Denmark, grew up in a small town very close to the German border. So it's interesting, when we grew up, there was one Danish television channel and 3 German television channels. So I watched Fresh Prince dubbed in German when I was a kid. Father is an electrical engineer. So I thought for many years I was going to go electrical engineer. But in my senior years in high school, I had a fantastic physics teacher. And so I really felt that physics was something I wanted to challenge. Now, as you know, physics is pretty tough. So I went into that with, expectations that would be very tough. But I actually loved it. It's a great. Physicists feels like we have studied the fundamental science.
Absolutely.
So when you've studied the fundamental science, you also believe that all the other disciplines you can definitely learn. But yeah, I did a PhD in physics, actually in semicon physics, using semicon techniques for microelectronic mechanical system.
This is why you love nerding out with all of our electrical engineers.
That, and also when we talk about nano imprint and all that, this is my backyard. I can probably go into a clean room and help them if I need to. But our technology was strong enough to start a company on. So straight out of school, I started a company, founded a company, raised venture capital money, and was deeply involved in that. Actually, the chief scientific officer in the company, and had a blast in that space. But when you come out of school and you start a company, nobody's actually teaching you how to build a business plan or how to build a competitive analysis. So I had to dive into that just by using common sense, combined with my background in physics, where you really learn how to break problems down into pieces. One thing when I look back, interesting enough, is that I've always moved towards the biggest challenges. I also were running. I played soccer for a long time. I was mediocre in soccer, but running was something that really spoke to me, because you have to endure a lot of pain and really challenge yourself.
Wow.
And it's super hard, but you can. It's only you and the street, and just go all in. So I felt also that was a tough and enduring sport you have to go for. I have a bigger passion today about impact on making difference for diseases. And that is not something that I grew up with. It's not because I had a close family member that died of cancer. I also had that, but that was not, if I look back, that was not the driver. It came later. I joined Darko back in, I think it was 2007, where the company has just been acquired by private equity. I joined as a chief of staff, coming in and helping to turn the company around. So that was kind of why I entered cancer diagnostic.
That challenge of turning Darko around, exactly.
That was really the challenge, and with the mindset of saying, okay, let's do that for a few years, and then find another challenge. But it turned out that after a little bit of time in Darko, it grew on me, that you're here for a reason. You are here on this planet for a reason. You can actually be in a company that have impact on people's life, and that that when people are sitting with some of the most toughest conversations they have when they realize they have a devastating disease, that you can help them fight that disease.
Absolutely.
And that started to build that passion that never left me.
Did you always envision becoming a CEO?
When I had the startup company, it was very clear I did not want to be the CEO. I could probably have insisted on that, but that was not the aim. I want to have impact. I want to do something that when you look back on your life, that you have made a big difference, and you've been a part of something that made a big difference. The title in itself was secondary. Obviously, at some point in time, I think, hey, I can probably become CEO also. So it becomes something that could be interesting to explore. But for me, it has been more important to be CEO in the right company than being CEO. Yeah. And that also what led me to Illumina. I think the mental picture I have in my head and what continues to drive me is that when a patient sits there and have that conversation with his physician, and unfortunately he or she hears that you have a cancer, and this can be a devastating outcome. That mentally, the mental picture is that we here from Illumina sits next to that patient, and we give that patient a fighting chance. We will make sure that their cancer is profiled the right way. We'll make sure that we can help make sure they get the right treatment, and we just make sure that whatever happens, we're here to help you fight. And when you fight, you have also a chance to win.
Let's bring it back now to you joining Illumina. Right. Obviously, you joined at somewhat of a tumultuous time. The company was facing some significant headwinds. What made you say yes? Why were you so excited to join the company? Why take on this challenge?
As long as I've known Illumina, I've always been amazed and the things that Illumina have done, both from a technology perspective, but more from an impact perspective on society. And as I also mentioned, I do believe that the choices I'm making is more based on impact and the opportunity to be a part of a team that can make impact rather than the title or what it means for me personally. So that was a huge reason for me to choose Illumina. It was less of a concern, of course it was a concern, but less of a concern whether there were issues in front of us. I'm hoping I can sit in this role for many years, and I have seen enough companies and been enough part of leadership team that I know there are times where things are going well and times where things they're not going well, independent how good company you are. The market might be good, the market might be bad. So my point is, in the life cycle of a CEO or any leader, you'll face challenging times and you'll face good times. And so that I didn't want that to be the decision for coming into and being a part of a fantastic team. So I put that secondary and saying, look, the first few years is going to be tough. I mean, we have to change the direction we're taking. And had I stayed, I could have maybe had an easier route in the beginning, but that was not the point. The point was that I wanted to be a part of a company that could have a huge impact on this society. And I felt like with my passion, my mission, it was a great fit. And if I could be a part of and helping Illumina get to the next level, that would be my dream come true.
I really sort of feel that sense of purpose throughout the organization. I mean, even when you talk to people in operations, they realize that the work that they're doing and how they impact has a massive impact. I find that incredibly motivating. I also think it's pretty motivating if we just zoom out and look at 2026 for Illumina. I mean, it's been an incredible start of the year. We've launched 5-Base, we've launched TruePath, some of the groundbreaking updates on the NovaSeq X, and all of sort of this momentum and science that's starting to come out of our customers realizing what they're able to do with the multi-omics portfolio. So what is it that really sets the company apart?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that set this company apart. I mean, the innovation that we continue to drive out is the legacy also of this company. We have proven that over decades that Illumina is a fantastic innovation engine. But while we have done that a lot on genomics, on solving big problems within the genome, I think we are moving beyond that. Not away from that, but beyond the genome itself.
Absolutely.
Genome and genomics will be, DNA sequencing will continue to be the center part of Illumina. But solving biology and solving biological questions are beyond DNA sequencing. And it's actually a good thing. I don't think any of us wanted that all our future was driven off our genome itself. That meant there was nothing we could do. We were just locked in from we were born, and there was nothing we could do. So it's actually a very good thing that the genome, even though from a company perspective, maybe that would be even better, but from a human perspective, it's good that the genome is only a part of our biology. But that also means that there are much bigger challenges to be addressed. And I think we are just on the cusp of a next revolution here. Illumina have been driving the genomic revolution over the past 2 decades. And going from, back in days where in reality we thought that only 2% of the genome was relevant and 98% was just junk DNA. Yeah. I would maybe submit we today understand 30% of the genome, so there's still a lot to uncover and to understand biology, and we haven't really dig truly deep into it. But so there's so much more to uncover that. But what the power is for Illumina now is that what we have built up of an ecosystem and an understanding on the genome, we can now shift that and move that beyond genomic or the DNA sequencing itself, but now look at the epigenetic layer, on the proteomics layer, and also, of course, on modalities, on looking at single cell, spatial, and combine that all together. Because that's where you will truly understand the biological challenges, is in the intersection of all these different dimensions. And I think when it can be done on a sequence of all of that, and we can combine that in the software, that is the true opportunity. And I think this is where Illumina will really shine over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you also have to sort of match the complexity of the biology, right? Yeah. Biology is not a single dimension. No. It exists across multiple dimensions. And so researchers, clinicians need multi-dimensional tools to really be able to unravel that complexity. I totally agree. Jacob, somewhat of a, maybe not controversial question, but a question that I think is an important one to address here with you specifically, which is that there tend to be narratives out there about Illumina, not always the most positive, sort of how maybe we conduct ourselves or how we treat competition. Can you maybe comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, I would say Illumina is an industry leader. And with leadership comes also that everybody has an opinion about you. So I think that goes with the territory, and I don't mind that. I think it's only, people only share opinions because there's somebody to have an opinion about. So I think we should start by being proud around that. I think our job in Illumina is to drive innovation and use our leadership position to really make sure our customers are getting the best from us. I think competition is important. As I mentioned, I did run when I was much younger, and I liked the competition. But I was practicing a training every day. We were about 6 boys that was practicing together, or working out together and training together. And I knew exactly where I fitted in this. I knew I was faster on the 800 meters than this person, but slower on the 200 meter on that person, and so on and so forth. So that also meant that when we were out and we were at competition together, we were just even practicing together, I knew I had to push myself to always be better than that person, and I was trying to strive to be better than the other person. So and that pushed all of us to be better. And I think that's where competition is great. Yeah. Fundamentally, we're here to solve customers' problems and help customers be successful. But competition makes sure that we continue to think about every day how we win and how we show up every day to compete and be a better company. And that competitive spirit is something that I believe just makes us be better and continue to challenge ourselves. Do we think well enough about our customers? But in the end, it's all about the customer. It's not about, in the end, we're not here. It's not about the winning about somebody else. It's about solving problems and helping customers be successful. And in the end, help the patient out there. Our customers, all the innovations that our customers have come to life with, all the papers that have been generated, all the research have been generated, all the clinical insights have been generated. Absolutely. That comes together in an ecosystem. And it's our opportunity to continue to move that ecosystem forward to deeper scientific insight, better clinical outcome, and really change the trajectory of health in this world. And this is not about Illumina. Illumina is a catalyst to this. It's about our customers and the combined ecosystem we do. And that's how I think about it. We need to make sure that we are a catalyst for everyone else.
This is actually a great segue into the next question, which is about 2 years ago, we launched a new workflow strategy.
Yeah.
And it's anchored in this commitment that I think we've heard you say many times, which is the highest quality insights at the lowest end-to-end cost. Yes. And that really, really speaks to me, mostly because of the feedback that I've heard from customers, that it's not just about a box. They're not just buying, a sequencer, but they're really thinking about a workflow. So I guess my question to you is why, and maybe this is an obvious question, but I think it's something that we should address here. Why is this workflow so important?
But there's one angle that just says that this is just a continuation of the strategy that Illumina have been done for the last few decades. And why is that? Illumina, over the last few decades, have solved the biggest problem in the whole research workflow. And that was the cost of sequencing and the quality of sequencing. We have now brought that down to a level where if you really want to expand science and expand opportunities, you have to look at the end-to-end solution. You cannot, if sequencing is not the main bottleneck anymore from a cost perspective or from insight perspective, you also have to solve the library prep, you have to solve maybe automation, you have to solve the interpretation. And what is more even complicated now is that is different from each application. So very different if you want to do whole genome sequencing versus panel sequencing versus maybe looking at multi-omics, where you look at both proteomics and DNA sequencing at the same time. So it becomes much more complex. So the question you have now to start to address is that application-specific workflow and insights. And that is much more complicated than just drive down the cost of sequencing and increase the quality of sequencing. For some applications, that continues to be the most important thing. But for us, we need to now really truly understand our customers and understanding their applications and what they're trying to solve, and then go out and help them solving those problems by addressing what truly they're looking for. It's not sequencing, it's the end-to-end workflows.
And drive an answer, a result, an insight.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why I say with the highest quality insight, which can be very different if you look at MRD versus proteomics versus something else. And so that's high quality insights. That is answers. And then for the lowest end-to-end cost, because we want to drive, we're not even started by looking at biological samples or the depth of insights we want to create. So we continue to drive down the cost of the workflow. But if sequencing is only 20% of that cost of that workflow, which it is for applications in spatial, proteomics, and other places, you end up, if you optimize for that, you're not really solving anything for your customer. You're just solving a small fraction of their challenge. So understanding the customer, understanding the applications, and then help them to become successful. And that's why one of our key values today is make the customer heroes, which is all about making them successful.
And that also sort of serves as a feedback loop to the sequencing, right? Because the better that we understand applications, the better sequencers we build, the more that those sequencers are really in tune with the applications and needs of our customers.
Absolutely. And Illumina is still all about sequencing. We're still using the sequencing platform as the central hub. We're building the workflows around it, but we also still, all the assays that can go on a sequencer, that's what we are, that's what the central part of Illumina strategy still is. Yeah.
So maybe this is tied into the workflow question. Maybe it's a little bit broader, bring AI into this conversation. It feels like people are talking about it everywhere, using it everywhere. It definitely has the potential to completely transform many, many industries. I feel like in life sciences particularly, the burden is maybe a little bit heavier because the stakes ultimately are going to have an impact on human lives. Yeah. So I have a two-part question for you around AI. The first is what are the cautions? And then the second part is where is there sort of transformative promise?
When you think about AI from a tech company and a life science company, is that you can say there's some saying in the tech industry, break things fast, right? And then move on. I mean, you don't want to do that in life science. That could have huge impact, both on people's lives and of course also understanding of science. So you need to be more mindful around, and we've seen customers, of course, in the history here over the last decade that have actually addressed life science or clinical with the same way that you would do in a tech company, which has been disastrous. So you need to be mindful and not just think that AI can do everything. And the other part is that you need also to make sure you truly understand what problem you're trying to solve, and make sure you solve that with the mindset of be mindful around that you don't want the AI to hallucinate and give you wrong answers. So there's a lot there that we need to be very mindful around how we use it. That said, is that I think that we are again, that AI is going to help us get a better insight on biology. Biology is super complicated and complex. I think all researchers that is involved in science, generally speaking, but definitely life science, is that every time we uncover one layer, we realize that we haven't even understood that layer.
It's like a massive onion.
It's a massive onion, and it's so complex that no Excel sheet can solve this. No one modality can solve this. And in fact, even if you wanted to understand do a lot of sequencing and then proteomics and then lipidomics and you just continue, if you don't build it together, you don't get the true understanding. So human, life and human biology is in a way just a neural network. The signaling pathway is a lot of different signals that go through different parts of the biological hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, AI is a good simulation of biology. What we don't have today is feeding those models with data. As you know, in AI, large language models today, you can feed the models with you can scrape the internet. And you can feed that into models, and you can do some additional learning, and you will start to see something working if the model is big enough. We now have probably large enough models, but we don't have enough data. The data in biology doesn't exist. So there's a huge opportunity with Illumina to create data, the internet of biology, so to say, and start to feed models with that. At this point, I don't think it's truly understood how big those models should be and how much data we need to feed it before we start to see that emergence. Same happened with large language model. They have been out there for a long time, but it was only when they hit a certain level in compute power or size of models and, of course, fit with enough data that you had that emergence of you could start to predict sentences. How does that look like in biology? It will happen, but how much do we need to feed that and how much do we build up? And I think that's a huge opportunity for not only Illumina, but the whole ecosystem. And I think that is going to drive insight over the next years to come for better understanding biology and help us solving a lot of challenges out there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think with the creation of the BioInsights division, many of the investments that we're making across Illumina were uniquely positioned there to sort of build and contribute to that complex data. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up China. I have sort of a little funny story about how I found out that you were in China. I looked down at my phone. I had a text from my mom saying, your CEO's in China. And I said, what? I looked up and read a Wall Street Journal article and saw that you were one of, I think it's 16 CEOs that went in this delegation to China. Within Illumina, we started talking, and I think much of the community is wondering, why was Illumina picked? Why was Illumina there to represent the life science and biotech industries?
Yeah, first and foremost, it was an incredible honor to be selected and be there representing US and, of course, our industry. It was an of course, deep and insightful trip that I very much enjoyed. I'm, of course, honored that Illumina was selected. I think we represent very well what the big opportunities are. I think there's a very strong consensus globally, but certainly also in China that the genome is very important for the future of health and driving longevity, fighting diseases, and so on. And thereby we are center of that. I truly believe this is a global challenge, and I want to make sure that Illumina can play globally to help solve those biggest challenges. That means that we need to work with the best scientists around the world to solve some of those challenges, and we want to be supportive of everyone that wants to go there. So it was a fantastic opportunity to go there, both engaging with the administration, both in China, of course, the US administration, but also a lot of very fascinating CEOs that participate in this trip. But I did have the opportunity to go to the our Beijing office site and meet our employees and have a conversation about how we can continue to drive our opportunities in China and just spend time with the Chinese team, which is super excited and had a lot of energy about also where Illumina can get. So a lot of customers in China, and look forward next time to go and spend more time with them.
Awesome. I wanted to come back to oncology.
Yeah.
I think you know this. I've spent probably the most time in my career focused in oncology. We are coming on the heels of ASCO. It feels like every year at ASCO, there are just more and more breakthroughs. And many of those breakthroughs actually trace back to sequencing. And there's a contribution, at least, that sequencing's made. This year at ASCO, we announced something that I'm really excited about, which is whole genome solutions in oncology. Illumina is really tackling some of the largest barriers that exist for the adoption of whole genome sequencing in oncology around cost, sample input, informatics. So I'm really excited about this. I'd love to get your take on sort of where you see Illumina having the biggest impact in oncology and where oncology and sequencing is going.
Yeah, I definitely share your passion about oncology. This is how I feel I grew up in life science when I was started in Darko Cancer Diagnostic in immunohistochemistry back in the days. And so I'm very passionate about what we can do there. So I think DNA sequencing, of course, for a long time have had a huge impact on oncology. Fundamentally, for the last 10 years has been instrumental in characterizing cancers to ensure you get the right treatment. Yeah. And with more and more drugs coming out that is driven by specific mutations and variants, of course, DNA sequencing is required to make sure you get the right treatment out the gate and with a much higher success rate of fighting that disease. But unfortunately, we also know that these diseases or cancers sometimes comes back. Yeah. And we know that the earlier you can detect a cancer coming back, or for that sake, a cancer at all, the better you can treat that. So MRD, as we talked about here, is minimal residual disease testing, where you are looking at when the cancer is potentially coming back after you have treated it, is a very, it's a substantial step forward in the fight against cancer. The earlier we can detect it, the better we can fight it. And the more sensitive test you have, and the broader band of molecular profile you can look at. So fundamentally what you're looking at, as you know, in blood is that variants cropping up, mutations cropping up that is going to drive the cancer onset again. And the earlier you can detect that, the better. And the more types of variants you can look at, the better. Yeah. The better chance you have for finding that something is going on. And the only thing you need to do fundamentally is to see something is happening. And now you can start to monitor or start treatment again. And our MRD test that we're coming out with for research is a whole genome approach, looking at the whole genome, not only a part of the genome. And thereby we give many more shots at goal, so to say, for detecting the recurrence of cancer. So I'm super excited about that also. I think many of our customers have done tremendous work within Absolutely MRD, and incredible. Fascinating. And I think we're just contributing into this where Illumina and our platforms can be used to address MRD and other types in the fight against cancer. So very excited about that. And I'm just, again, honored to be a part of fighting cancer.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly inspiring to think about what our customers have been able to do with our technology. And sort of even back when I think, the last time I was here at Illumina was in 2019, where MRD was. Now to fast forward in 2026, where you see it being used more routinely, it's really incredible. And now some of the momentum we're seeing in even things like hematological malignancies and consolidation of lots of different tests onto a whole genome backbone, it's super exciting. We've, as a company, have experienced a lot of growth in clinical. We talk a lot and we say we have these huge clinical customers, or we are growing so much in clinical. How is it that we're really defining and talking about clinical at Illumina?
So let's focus just on IVD solutions. When you fight a cancer, you need to detect the cancer. And when you have detected the cancer with one type of methodology on the other, it could be DNA sequencing, it could be many other ways. But when you have done that, you need to profile the cancer in order to make sure that you get the right treatment. Historically, back in the days, you would, out the gate, use chemotherapy, and hopefully you could kill the cancer. Fundamentally, chemotherapy is just poison.
Yeah, it is.
And so it would be broadband. That's why you have all these side effects. That's why it's not working super well. But since it will kill cancer cells faster than your own cells, but it will also kill your own cells. So now with molecular profiling the cancer, you can now start to see if there are any specific variants that you can actually address from a drug perspective. So with that molecular profiling through genomics sequencing or DNA sequencing, you can now immediately get the right drug to the right patient immediately and have a much better chance of fighting that. Second, after that, is that you also want to monitor the disease afterwards. When you have done with the treatment, you want to monitor that it's not coming back. And obviously, we will also like to start to make early detection. So you go for your annual testing every year. And if you detect the cancer early, we know we have a much better chance of fighting the disease. It's very different to fight cancers when you're on stage 1 or 2, rather you're on stage 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
So early detection is going to be very important. That's still in front of us. Now, clinical means that you want to make sure that in the end, that the physician have access to this technology. We see here in US, where we have a lot of centralized clinical customers that have used our technology to build fantastic assays that they are then serving and offering to clinicians and physicians for them to make the right decisions. In the rest of the world, it's more decentralized, so it's more down to individual hospital or hospital systems that will offer these type of tests. So in the clinic, it's not about necessarily the latest and greatest technology. It is to make sure that when you have a finding, that you can action that finding. And that is super important to truly recognize that it's not only about the newest research, there's maybe a paper coming out of it, but if the physician can't make a decision on the treatment, on a direction of the disease progression, it's not really helpful to see there's a new variant. So clinical is all about actionability and ease of use. So make sure that you can build something that you can fundamentally get the sample in and get the result out, because in clinic, it's not about excitement about technology. It's an excitement about actionability.
Absolutely.
And thereby, that is the key focus areas. Make it simple, make it ease of use, and make it comprehensive so you can address all the different applications that is needed there. And I think that's a huge opportunity for Illumina. We're serving our large centralized customers today, and I think there's a huge opportunity to go much more into decentralized and serve that, which is primarily also ex-US.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit about leadership. I don't think you know this about me, but I am sort of a nerd for leadership books. I love to read them. Yeah. Becoming a leader is really more about sort of trial by fire experiences that you have. You know, I look back at the first time that I led a team, and it didn't go great, frankly. I learned a lot of lessons. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about sort of your leadership philosophy and what's shaped you. Have you had mentors in your career to now obviously lead now an organization of more than 9,000 employees?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, also coming out of school, I started out actually jumping into leadership immediately. So for me, it's been, most of my roles have had certain levels of leadership. There's been a few roles where I've been individual contributor also, but for the longest time, I've been in leadership roles. It has been a part of, you can say, my career for most of my career. I think what I do believe is important is, number one, is that when you say you're going to do something, then do it. Don't find any excuses. Try to do your best to do it. Nobody expects that everything is going to be perfect. Nobody expects that you have a magic wand that can get things done. But if you make a commitment, it doesn't matter whether it's read down or you have a casual conversation, then do your absolute best to do it.
Absolutely.
And in the cases where you can't do it, then at least go and be proactive in saying, look, this is what happened. Here's my new commitment. I think that for me is, as a person, but also as a leader, I think is important. And put those expectations down to individuals. So I think that's number one. Number two is that leaders, it doesn't really matter what level on an organization, needs to have strategic clarity. And for me, that's also a very important part of at least my own leadership journey, is that I've always want to make sure we have strategic clarity and then execution. Yeah. Not opposite and not one without the other, but those two combined together. I believe that you always have to, it doesn't matter where you sit in the organization, but you need to understand the company strategy. But not only the strategy, but also the why that is the right strategy. And spend time thinking about that. And when you do that, you have to stand up in front of your own team and explain the strategy. Don't refer back to the CEO and the group president or whoever is the one you're looking to in the organization and the CTO, but be able to speak that yourself, because then you also own it. Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of also leadership, is that take ownership. Yeah. And because you're not just saying, oh, the CEO told me. No, you as a leader Absolutely. Is committed. You have put it into your language. You're telling and committed to your team, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And now you're committed. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of leadership. Don't find excuses. Yeah. Just get it done.
Yeah. Now that you've been here almost 3 years, is there a moment or is there a particular time when you felt extremely proud to be CEO of Illumina?
Well, I would say by every morning I wake up, I'm still very proud to be a part of this company. But more importantly, I'm proud to be a part of this team. It's not about individual, it's about how we show up as a team. And granted, we have been through some challenging times here at Illumina over the last few years when I've been here. And I'm so proud of seeing how our colleagues have responded to the challenge. And really digged in and kept going and wanted to do better. And I think this is what it comes down to, is that when you have a mission-driven company, when you know that what we do is impacting people's life, yes, there will be ups and downs, there will be challenging times where we have to go through, but what really drives us is that single person that you might have and being able to help fight a disease. And maybe, as I said, a single person, maybe it's millions, but in the end, when we hear those stories about that individual patient, where we have had some impact on helping that person getting through tough times, that makes everything different. And I think that's what I see in the employees and in all our colleagues, is that I can see the fire in their eyes. I can feel the fire inside myself. And that is what makes me proud, that we make a difference and we do that together as one team.
Yeah, I completely second that. I feel like the culture here organizationally is definitely a team culture. It's not an ego-driven culture. It's about doing the best thing for the company. Absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe wrapping up towards the end here, I thought we would have a little fun. We could do a lightning round. Are you game for a lightning round? So here I ask you a question. I just want short answers, and I'm just going to keep firing some questions at you. All right. First question, night person. Are you a night owl or are you a morning person? You up early?
Morning person.
Okay. Favorite city you've ever visited for work?
Oh, Copenhagen.
Favorite city you've ever visited on personal travel?
Copenhagen.
Okay. Proud Dane. This is a brutal one for me because I'm a huge music fan. And so when people ask me this question, I really don't know how to answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a favorite band? Do you have a favorite type of music that you listen to?
Well, I'll put it this way. I have still young kids, 14 years old and 11 years old. My son, 14 years old, he listens to music that I can't repeat here because there's a lot of words you can't use. Yeah. My daughter only listens to music where there's a female singer. Okay. So we are debating that in the car. Uh-huh. But if it all comes down to it, I would prefer Pink Floyd.
Great one. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Love Pink Floyd. Yeah, my son was very excited about the new Drake album that dropped. I don't know if your son was also. This is a very San Diego question. We're known for our burritos, our taco shops. What's your go-to at a San Diego taco shop?
I will always go for a fish or shrimp taco, and with a good number of spice in it. I am pescatarian, so I only eat fish as a protein.
Do you go grilled or breaded?
I would probably go more for a taco, more breaded, but then with some spice on it.
I agree with you. I always go breaded on the fish taco. They're amazing. Do you have a favorite leadership quote?
Never give up.
Love it. All right, last question here. If you could sequence a genome of any organism, sort of present, past, extinct, what would it be and why?
Some of you might not remember this movie, but there's a movie back from the 1986 that is called The Fly.
Yeah, okay.
And if you remember that...
the movie, I didn't watch it, yeah.
You didn't watch it, no. Adrian? It's a fantastic movie where this scientist, he makes a portal where he can, move from through time, not through time, but from one place to another place through those two portals. And when he does that, in one of the experiments, there's a fly coming in that portal. So actually his DNA is being combined with that fly DNA. And in the end, he transforms into a fly over time. So it would be fun to sequence that combined human fly and see what that DNA would look like. So I think that would be from the movie.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. This round 2 for me here at Illumina, we are a lot more open about our roadmap.
Yes.
Definitely sharing sort of things to come. We haven't shared everything so far. So I'm wondering, is there something you can share with us, maybe tease us a little bit with some of the things that are set to come out here at Illumina?
This was a clear strategic shift we made when I came in also. I do believe that you should be as open as you can with your innovations. It's not about going out and pre-sell things, but it's really about making sure that your customers know what is coming so they can plan for that, they can prepare for that, but also, even more importantly, they can be a part of the innovation themselves. Mm-hmm. And so sharing with customers, showing what is coming and what direction we're taking also allows us to have a conversation early with our customers. Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I love
Some
that.
will say, now you're telling your competition what you're doing. Yeah, that's a risk, but honestly, that's a risk I'm willing to take because it's all about our customers. So I think that's number one. So when we look into, there are things we want to talk about and things we're saying, look, there are just a few things we are not going to always talk about too early. What we have already talked about is that we will have a spatial solution coming out. I think Illumina has a fantastic opportunity to really change how we think about spatial and make sure that we go from 1 to 2 samples into hundreds, if not thousands of samples. That require whole transcriptome base, but also to a price point where everybody can start to do spatial. So I'm super excited about that, and I think that's going to be
me too.
in the future. Then later in the year, we will have all other things coming out that we're not ready to talk about today. But if you put 2 and 2 together, I'm pretty transparent of what I'm saying will come and what we're working on. So if you put 2 together and look at my background, you'll start to have a sense for what is coming.
But I did hear the words later this year, so
later this year, we I don't want to commit too much. I'm just saying at some point of time, very soon, in the near future.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Jacob, this has been an incredible honor. I think conversations like this really remind me why I'm so motivated to work here. I want to thank you so much for the time, for the candor, and I also want to thank everybody for joining the second episode of The Sequence. So thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you for having me.